This hero got killed, stuffed in a fridge, and accidentally sparked a comics-wide controversy. And this one was so blindly patriotic, he went from parody to punchline in record time. I went deep inside the internet to find you some heroes you've never even heard of. These are 7 superheroes from the 1990s that everyone hated. Number 7, Alexandra DeWitt, Green Lantern. Alexandra DeWitt could have been a great supporting character. She was smart, quick-witted, and dating the brand new Green Lantern Kyle Rayner when she first appeared in 1994. But just as readers were getting to know her, she was gone. Only 2 issues after her debut, the villain Major Force murdered her and stuffed her body into a refrigerator for Kyle to find. The scene was brutal, and while it was meant to shock, it left fans feeling cheated. Gail Simone later coined the term women in refrigerators after this exact moment, calling out the lazy trope of killing off women purely to push a male hero's story forward. Alex's death became bigger than the character herself. She wasn't remembered for her personality or potential, but as the prime example of how carelessly female characters could be written out. Even years later, her few appearances are usually just flashbacks or alternate versions, and always with that fridge moment hanging over them. For many fans, Alexandra DeWitt isn't just part of a Green Lantern storyline. She's a symbol of a storytelling shortcut the 90s were far too comfortable using. Number 6, General Glory, DC. General Glory was never meant to be taken too seriously. He first showed up in Justice League America number 46 in 1991, right in the middle of the team's comedy era under Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. On the surface, he looked like a long-lost Golden Age hero, square jaw, patriotic costume, a walking poster for truth, justice, and the American way. In reality, he was a tongue-in-cheek knock at Captain America, a Hutu super soldier who fought Nazis with cheesy one-liners and an almost comical level of patriotism. Behind the mask was Joe Jones, an ordinary modern-day guy who could transform into General Glory by reciting a magical oath. The second he did, out came the bright spandex and the unwavering belief in American ideals, so unwavering that it tipped into parody. In the snarky, self-aware Justice League of that era, this worked at first. He was the lovable, outdated uncle who meant well but didn't quite fit in. The problem was, he stuck around. What started as a funny one-off joke became a regular feature, and the gag wore thin fast. His speeches about freedom, his golly gee attitude, his over-the-top wholesomeness, it was the same beat over and over. Readers who enjoyed him in small bursts began to see him as filler in a team book known for sharp banter and evolving character arcs. Even the other characters treated him like a relic, harmless, occasionally helpful, but hopelessly out of step. That was the point, but it also made him hard to invest in. Without growth or new angles, General Glory became exactly what he was parodying, a dated archetype stuck in the wrong era. He works better now as a cameo, popping up for a quick laugh or Easter egg nod to longtime fans. But as a regular hero, the novelty is long gone. In the 90s, he went from being a clever jab at superhero tropes to the butt of the joke, and not in the way his creators intended. Number 5, Kent Shakespeare, DC's Legion of Superheroes. The Legion of Superheroes has always been DC's most chaotic clubhouse. Decades of tangled history, more reboots than you can count, and enough heroes to fill a stadium. In 1990, they decided to throw in someone new, Kent Shakespeare. And yes, that's his real name, not a parody from a comedy sketch. He showed up in Legion of Superheroes Annual Number 1 during the 5 years later era, when DC was still patching up the mess left by Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Legion's old link to Superboy had been erased, so the fix was to give them their own Superman-type hero without actually using Superman. That's Kent, a descendant of Earth heroes with super strength, crazy stamina, and near invulnerability. He was built to be the team's 31st century powerhouse and moral compass. It all sounded great, until the execution fell flat. First off, the name Kent Shakespeare had fans smirking like DC was trolling them. Then came the behind-the-scenes drama. The Superman editorial team wasn't thrilled about another Superman-level guy running around in the Legion, so Kent's big moments started vanishing. The big storylines he could have carried, given to other characters instead. Pretty soon, Kent was just there. He'd show up, throw a punch, nod seriously, and vanish again. No standout stories, no big character growth, just a background strongman in a book full of more interesting personalities. People didn't dislike him because he was bad, they just couldn't find a reason to care. Number 4. Dog Welder, DC, Section 8. Even in the anything goes chaos of comics, some characters make you stop, blink twice, and think, no way that's real. Dog Welder is one of those. You'd never catch him teaming up with Superman or Batman. He came from the grimy, satirical corner of the DC universe that gave us Hitman. Garth Ennis and John McCrea introduced him in Hitman number 18 in 1997 as part of Section 8, a so-called super team that was basically a disaster in capes. And Dog Welder's superpower? Welding dead dogs to people. That's it. No tragic backstory, no secret noble cause. Just a silent guy in a welder's mask who stalked criminals and did that. It was meant to be pitch black comedy, the kind of absurd, over-the-top visual gag you laugh at because it's so wrong. But not everyone laughed. Even fans of Ennis's dark humor found Dog Welder a bit much. There wasn't a hidden message or deeper parody, just pure gross-out weirdness. Some readers thought it was hilarious in a, I can't believe DC printed this way, while others were completely put off. In mainstream fandom, he became this strange bit of comic book trivia. Yeah, DC really has a guy who welds dead dogs to people. After Hitman ended, Dog Welder disappeared for years, only to return in 2015's All-Star Section 8. This time, Ennis leaned in even harder, giving us a new Dog Welder and revealing the role was actually a cursed mantle passed down through generations. Because of course it was. Today, Dog Welder's basically a cult legend, the kind of deep-cut fans bring up just to watch someone's face go from confused to horrified. He's unforgettable, but not in a heroic way. In a decade full of edgy, over-the-top characters, Dog Welder proved you didn't need giant guns or endless pouches to hit peak 90s excess. Just an idea so bizarre, it lives rent-free in your head forever. Number 3. Gunfire, DC Bloodlines event. The 90s loved big comic events, and Bloodlines was DC's shot at making brand new heroes overnight. Out of that chaos came Gunfire, a guy whose superpower was turning anything he touched into a weapon. Coffee cup, grenade, remote control, landmine. Cool in theory, but on the page it was just kind of weird. Andrew Van Horn was a wealthy CEO who got caught up in the alien mess, and DC clearly thought he could be their next big action star. They even gave him his own series right away, but it never clicked. One issue, he was a brooding vigilante. The next, he was cracking one-liners, and readers were left wondering who this guy was supposed to be. Then there was his outfit, pure 90s excess, bulky armor, neon trim, and more pouches than any human being could possibly use. He looked less like a superhero and more like he'd gotten lost on the way to a paintball match. Fans didn't exactly rush to defend him. His powers were confusing, his style was loud for all the wrong reasons, and Bloodlines itself was already being called a flop. Before long, Gunfire vanished into the background, popping up only when a writer needed a throwaway cameo or a random death scene. Now, he's mostly remembered as a punchline, the perfect example of how the 90s could take a wild idea, crank it up to 11, and still end up with a character nobody really missed. Number 2. Youngblood, Image Comics. If any comic team sums up the wild, over-the-top vibe of the early 90s, it's Youngblood. They didn't come from Marvel or DC. They were Image Comics' very first title, hitting shelves in 1992 as Rob Liefeld's big splash after his star-making runs on New Mutants and X-Force. The hype was massive. The first issue moved over 1 million copies, and Liefeld was treated like a rock star. Then people actually read it. The idea sounded solid. A government-backed superhero squad split into 2 units, one for domestic missions, one for international. But the team looked like they'd walked straight out of a Mountain Dew commercial. Oversized guns, even bigger muscles, skin-tight armor, swords as tall as the characters wielding them, and enough pouches to supply an army. The lineup had Shaft, a scowling archer leader Chapel, a skull-faced mercenary, and Vogue, a supermodel gymnast. It was all flash, but the stories were barely holding together. The art was loud and dynamic, but anatomy was flexible. Feet were tiny, chests were huge, and spines bent like rubber. Plots were little more than setups for giant splash pages, and the characters stayed frozen in their one-note personalities. Worse, the books were constantly delayed. Months could pass between issues, killing any momentum and sending readers elsewhere. Liefeld himself later called the early series a disaster when it came to actual storytelling. When the 90s comic bubble popped, Youngblood faded with it. Relaunches tried to reimagine or even parody the team, but they never shook their reputation as the poster children for 90s comic excess, all style, no depth. If nothing else, Youngblood proved that hype can sell 1 million copies. But keeping fans coming back, that's the real superpower. Finally, at number 1, Blood Syndicate, Milestone Comics. In the early 90s, Marvel and DC ruled the shelves, but in 1993, Milestone Media showed up to shake things up. Founded by Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, and Derek T. Dingle, Milestone set out to build a superhero universe that actually looked like the real world, with heroes from all kinds of backgrounds and cultures. One of their standout launches was Blood Syndicate, and while the covers made it look like just another extreme 90s squad, the story inside was on a whole different level. The series followed a crew of superpowered gang members who came together after the Big Bang, a riot in Dakota City where experimental gas turned hundreds of people into metahumans. The survivors formed the Syndicate, a shaky alliance of former rivals who didn't trust each other much but needed to stick together. There was Tech-9, the disciplined leader, Brickhouse, whose stone-like body made her nearly indestructible, Fade, who could phase through walls but carried heavy personal baggage, and Holocaust, a fire-powered loose cannon. Blood Syndicate didn't pull punches. It tackled gang wars, racism, poverty, LGBTQ identity, drugs, and police brutality, topics most superhero comics tiptoed around. Fade, for example, was one of the first openly gay black characters in mainstream superhero books, which was groundbreaking at the time. Critics loved it. The writing had bite, the art had energy, and the stories felt real. But the mainstream market wasn't ready. These characters weren't shiny, idealized heroes. They were messy, flawed, and often at odds with each other. That kind of moral gray area made it harder to sell next to the Spawns and Punishers of the day. On top of that, some comic shops dismissed Milestone as niche and didn't stock it properly, making it even tougher for readers to find. By 1996, the comic market crash took down sales across the board, and Blood Syndicate ended after 35 issues. Still, it built a loyal fan base, and years later, DC folded Milestone's characters into its multiverse. In 2021, the team even got a reboot, proof that the idea still hits home. Back in the 90s, though, Blood Syndicate was ahead of its time, and in comics, that can be both a badge of honor and a death sentence. These 7 heroes showed us that not every cape and cowl can win over fans. So which one did you actually read, or wish you hadn't? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more comic book flops, forgotten characters, and nostalgic throwbacks just like this.